each farm is going to produce with local ingredient and only sell in their locality. So if you see it like, if you zoom in, basically you only see one farm selling locally, but if you de-zoom, you can see that all those farms spread around the world do the same. So basically we can still have this global reach.
In my last interview, I interviewed Dr. Clapper, where he was talking about helping medical students get trained in plant-based nutrition. So part of creating the Vegan World documentary and this e-series is focusing on the bigger picture. So the question is, when there's 8 billion people in the world, how do we get them to shift to vegan? So obviously not everybody's going to shift vegan, but to get the close as possible to that number, I like to focus on the bigger picture systems changes. So when I came across your LinkedIn profile, it's about shifting from the dairy industry to plant-based milk. So just kind of starting off before we get into your company, what you do specifically, just maybe the bigger picture of what does it take at the systems level to shift the world completely off of dairy milk to plant-based milk?
Yeah. I think there needs to be different, lots of different ways to get to this point, and different solutions and different models. And I think it's great because it's moving more and more into this direction, and more organization, company, individuals are doing things like that to help move towards this goal. In terms of more governmental, help and things like that, I think it's like more things is they will only help and follow once there's really most of people already want to go into this direction, and then they will follow and put help in place and things like that. That's also why I created what I created. Without such help, that's usually what has to be done, is that it takes organizations, individuals, or company to make them first steps themselves, to try different solutions, to propose new models, to get to a solution that could work, and then all the other things would fall in place. There will be more demand, and then we can get more help from the government or from other organization in general. And so for the milk industry in particular, or it just in my opinion, it's just for any type of farming, like animal farming, what they mostly need is a new business model. If we want them to stop exploiting animals, most of them really like doing what they do. They really like it's their family heritage, the farm. It's like they grew up on it. It was in their family for years and years. They like usually, caring for the animals. Obviously, I'm more talking about small, medium scale farms, not factory farms. That's another problem. But if you go more with family businesses, that have, this kind of farms, they really like this. So it's really difficult for them to think that when it doesn't work, or if they want to shift, they need to give this all up and do something totally different, sell the farm and do something different. So I think it's great to help them find a way to continue, keeping the farm, even being with animals, and all these things, but in a way that is more ethical, more sustainable, and just to show them other solutions, because, when you're in it for your whole life and your family, it's really difficult to take a step back and just think about, oh, how could we change that? And most of them don't have all the resources or knowledge about what's happening, for example, in the plant-based industry. So I think it's our responsibility as companies, organizations, to really give them solutions, try solutions, and just help them in this way.
Interesting. I love how all my interviews, I'm sure you haven't seen all of them, but they're tying together, where I see there's the street activism builds the interest in plant-based, and there's companies like Beyond Meat, Oatly, and different things like that fill the demand. And then the government, I interviewed a politician, she said, now there's a place for the government to be able to change the laws and legislation around the demand. So it's really cool seeing all the different pieces tie together and make us feel like we're not alone. So I guess for people just tuning in, I know more about your project, so maybe introduce who you are, what your project is, and specifically what you're working on.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Geraldine. I'm the founder of a company called Refarm'd, and we're transitioning dairy farmers to, so from animal milk to plant milk production. We are helping them with a new business model, and we provide them everything that is needed for that. So we provide them with the equipment, the recipe, we handle distribution, we really handle everything around it. So they only focus on producing the milk. And we also ask them to keep the animal to become an animal sanctuary. So they really focus on the farm, the animals, and production. And so we are handling all the rest. So they're basically manufacturers for our product in this case. That's really how we do it, and we really focus on sustainability is like a major thing. So the product we are creating, in this case we have started with oat milk, is going to be made only with local ingredients, only sold locally, in glass bottles that we reuse, that we use again, that we take back, clean, and reuse. And so this is really important for us, to really keep it like this. And the recipe, we also try to make it as natural, artisan, farm fresh milk. So we really don't use any additives, or even we don't even use oils or added sugar in it. We really try to keep it as natural as possible, and want to kind of recreate this feeling you could have when before you would go to a farm to get your fresh milk or your fresh cheese, like to create the same thing but more more compassionate and more sustainable by producing plant-based products.
That's amazing. I was just shopping for plant-based milks for my coffee, and I'm starting to read the ingredients because I went from junk food vegan to transition to more whole foods plant-based. And then I look at the ingredients, it says organic milk on the front, but then it's like there's some sugar, there's some syrups, and sometimes oil. So like when I saw your website, what you do, I was like really glad something like that exists, especially if I mix it in with something. So I think your website has a graphic. I might put it in the video when I edit it, but there's the centralized, I guess, factory farm, or centralized creating the plant-based milk. And I guess there's distribution versus your model. Can you maybe put the graphic up if you kind of talk along those lines?
Yeah.
The benefits of that.
So yeah, we're trying to explain how our model works, because usually like food brands that would create, I don't know, plant milk, for example, well, they create a product, then they build factories, and then they distribute it, usually even around the world. So, and they build bigger and bigger factories. Sometimes they build other factories, like one per continent or things like that, and then ship everywhere. What we're trying to do here is to still be global, so to be able to have the same reach, to be able to sell products around the world. But instead of doing this way, we're doing it in a decentralized way, in the sense that instead of building huge factories here and there and shipping around the world, we're working with small to medium farmers to become the manufacturers. So each farm will only do a certain limited quantity, obviously. So it's still going to be an artisan, fresh, handmade product. But because we're going to be working with a lot of farmers, we really want to have a scalable model where we can work with as many farmers as possible. It's basically going to be so that farmers, like the products, are going to be available in everywhere. But each farm is going to produce with local ingredients and only sell in their locality. So if you see it like, if you zoom in, basically you only see one farm selling locally, but if you dezoom, you can see that all those farms spread around the world do the same. So basically we can still have this global reach. Obviously, depending on where the farm is, it's probably going to be different products, because it's going to be made with different ingredients, because we only use local ingredients, so local to the farm, and sell locally. So we really want to develop a range of products depending on that. We're really starting now with the UK, and then we're going to spread to Europe, and then after that further west. But we're really going to be always keeping it local, although we are trying to be global.
Amazing. I see you check all the boxes. There's the health, there's the environmental aspect, as well as obviously the animals. So what got you started in this? Like, what brought your attention to it? Why do you want to make the change?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a personal story. I've been vegan for 10 years now. I'm initially from the hospitality industry, so I worked in business and management in hospitality industry in France, where I'm from. But there, it's very meat and dairy heavy. So when I was working, in restaurants and hotel, it was all about that. And so when I became vegan for ethical reasons, I really struggled continue working in that. So I quit, and I started working on different projects that were more aligned with my value. Created a vegan online shop in France, working on a green event planning company. We even tried to build a sustainable village in Portugal with other people. So we had lots of different projects like that. And on the side, I became a software developer to make money and to be able to sustain myself. But I always wanted, to do something that was more aligned to my value and that has an impact on animal exploitation. That's my main goal. And so something I always wanted is to have my own, to build my own animal sanctuary. But I really struggled with the current model of animal sanctuaries because they rely so heavily on, donations, on volunteers to run. I have friends who have sanctuaries, and they just struggle every month to make sure, it's going to work out. Most of the cases they rent the land, so they are at risk to being expelled as well. What happens to the animals after that? And also the problem is we cannot just continue saving all these animals if the farming industry continues to produce them by the billions each year. It just doesn't add up. At some point we cannot, and we're using more resources to save those animals from an industry that is already very resource consuming. So I really wanted to kind of combine both, and to create a sort of a self-sustainable sanctuary model. And there was a time in France, or it's still the case, where like the farmers and the vegans are not going alone at all. Like there was even like, I would say, like a war between them, where farmers would come and interrupt vegan events with their meat and stuff, and vegans would start spraying on butcher shops, on the farms, or destroying things. So there was really the thing where farmers would believe it's because of vegans they're struggling, and other way around. But I really struggled with that, because for me, veganism is about compassion for everyone, not just animals. I understand the difficulty, but I mean, most of us were not born vegan, so it's easy to judge, and just say the other person is bad just because they're not vegan. But trying to understand why it's like this, why it's different for them, why they grew up in this, and for them it's normal. They've been taught since a child that this is normal, and even that you can be proud of this because you're feeding the country and all these things. So it's really difficult to just say they're bad people, and they don't deserve anything or something. So that just got me thinking, oh well, the farms could be actually the perfect places for sanctuaries, because they already have the infrastructure, they already have the animals, they already have the people that know how to care for these animals on a daily basis, which most of us vegans don't know how to do, because most of them treat them okay, treat them correctly, and love them, really love them. There's a disconnection clearly, because they need to see them as as commodities. They need to put a value on them because that's what they do, but they still care for them. So I hope that by shifting this perception they have on the animals, by making them turn into sanctuaries, they don't have this weight anymore on their shoulders, as to have to see them as they need to produce more. So it will really recreate a link between them, where they just see them as being there for no reason and just care for them on a daily basis. So this relationship would develop differently. And in my opinion, farmers are the best advocates for our movement, because if they say it's wrong, nobody can tell them otherwise. They know exactly what this industry is, and because they've been in it. So that's like my little goal behind the scenes. But yeah, so the whole thing was like this. So that could be great sanctuaries, because also when you save animals, usually, or when farms close and stuff like that, usually either the animals go to slaughter, or they try to find sanctuaries, but then the herd is um, separated, and all that, because they take, most sanctuaries cannot take like 100 cows at once or something. So they are separating families, and it's just using more resources. Here is kind of using the same resources, and most importantly, every farm that is transitioning to a sanctuary is not going to be continue breeding. So they're not going to bring a new babies to lives every year. So we're actually having a direct impact on animal exploitation by doing this, because we're stopping. It's one less farm that's going to produce more of these animals in this industry. So yeah, that's how it all came.
That's amazing. Yeah, on this channel, I interviewed one of my friends. She started a project called the Brave New Life Project in the United States, where they want to help workers transition out of animal agriculture jobs into sustainable jobs. And I think the long-term vision of having like I don't want to say a sanctuary, but like a community where they live, they work, they do plant-based agriculture, and then everything comes together. So it's really cool how you mentioned, instead of like tearing down the system and building something new, it's kind of like merging something that exists into something better. So taking existing dairy farms and turning them into plant-based. So with like, I'm sure there's an economic side of it to the dairy farmers, where do you want to talk a little bit about that, as far as if someone is a dairy farmer listening to this, how would they make money? Would they make the same amount of money? Would they be able to sustain themselves, etc.?
Yeah, so to be really clear, we're still totally in an experimental phase. So I cannot say everything is perfect, it works great, come with us. That's really why we're still testing. But the aim is really that from the plant-based production, so it's not going to be only plant milk, it's going to be all types of dairy alternatives, so also plant cheeses and yogurts and butter, all this kind of thing you would expect from a dairy company. So there are possibilities to diversify as well, and we're also thinking about other ways for them to get other streams of revenue. But like we really want to focus initially on this production. So it still makes sense like for them to move from milk to milk basically, but from animals to plants, and to continue producing some food because that's what they like. But we really want that this production allows them to cover all their costs, like for the sanctuary, but also for them as the farm, that it's beneficial for them. Because most of farmers, it depends on the country, but most dairy farmers are struggling. They're really not just not gaining much money. It's not them who are really earning the money. It's these big dairy processors in between them and the customers. So that's also why a lot of people say, no, even if it's better to drink plant milk or something, I'm still gonna buy milk from the farm because I want to support my farmers. But actually, if you really want to support farmers, you need to support them, help them get out of this industry, because this industry not only is exploitative to animals but to humans as well. Most of these dairy farms sell for less than production cost. And in most cases, that's crazy. They work like crazy and they get nothing for it. They don't even know where the milk is going, if it's going to be sold as milk, as yogurt, as cheese, or where. They don't have any control of that. And so they're just, there and trying to make it more productive. That's their whole aim. And small and medium scale farms are really struggling the most, because the bigger ones are now, able to invest in more and more machinery, because that's the only way you make money in there is if you get bigger and bigger, because you also get more subsidies and you are able to produce more and so work with bigger dairy companies. But smaller and medium scale, they just struggle more. And so that's why lots of them are actually closing down or selling the farm, or just struggling in debt. So we really want to help them in this way, that it gets more interesting for them, not only in on ethical and sustainable ways, but also financial ways. So we are really trying to develop this model with this in mind, that we really want it to be that they don't need to do 1,000 other things on the side, that it's like the main income. But we also want to allow them to have the opportunity to do other things if they would be interested in doing other things. But that's really the whole goal. But again, we're really still experimenting. We worked with 3 farms in 2020. Now we kind of pause, and we're going to start again with our farm in the UK, following some changes we made, and we really want to start it from there. We really want to get this farm first successful before we move on. And we have a list of other farmers that are waiting, that really want to make the transition, but we really want to first test this model. Once that is working, we're going to start again with all those other farmers.
That's great. Yeah, I know in the US and Australia, they're working on shifting subsidies away from dairy and meat into plant-based. So is that kind of thing happening in the EU and UK right now as well?
Yeah, more and more there. Like the process, the movement, like the changes from this side is much slower. Usually, I've been in touch with people who are trying to make changes in the parliament and things like that for more than 10 years, and they only get like scraps. It's like it's a big lobby, first of all, and it's just too risky for them to do that. So that's why they need to see first positive change in the industry, success stories, and people wanting more of that before it really changes. So there are more and more bills or things that are changed, so that farmers who do things that are a bit more sustainable, more efforts towards sustainability, they get more. But usually it's very ridiculous things, like you plant more bushes or a few more trees, and that's it. You are more sustainable. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of people trying to push for that, lots of political parties pushing for that. So obviously more for sustainable reasons, not for other reasons, but still it's a good move. But again, if we cannot really wait for that. What's interesting though, it depends on the country, but in the cases where we were working with farmers, so in Switzerland and in the UK, those farmers are able to still get their subsidies, although they are not farming animals anymore, because these subsidies are not given because they, with a specific goal to you need to exploit and kill the animals. That's not how it is. It's they're getting subsidies for just having a farmland. So depending on the size of their farm and depending on the size of the herd as well. So even if they just have the animals and just have the land, they still can get subsidies. So that's also what we're trying to do, is to help those farmers keep their subsidies as an initial income as well, to continue the support, then getting them this revenue from the plant milk. And something as well we're trying to do is optimize their overall costs. So something very important to know is that when we transition them to sanctuaries, these animals are not needed to be more productive, anymore. So we can just switch them back to their normal food, which is hay and grass. They don't need all this, supplements and antibiotics and animal feed that cost a lot and are coming from other places in the world. And this is like 30% of the cost of a farm is just animal feed, the food, the extra food, not the hay and grass that they give to these animals to make them more productive. So by changing to a sanctuary, we are cutting already this 30% off. So there are a lot of things like that we're trying to do, so they get more income from the production. We optimize their costs, and all in one, we're trying to make it, yes, more profitable for the farmers.
Amazing. Is there anything that you're like missing, any obstacles or like opportunities? Like if there's someone listening to this that can help you out, maybe someone who's already doing this in another part of the world, or a marketing resource, government resource, what could like we need, how can we support you, the world?
Yeah, so since we faced a lot of challenges when we started last year, it's like there are not much models where we can inspire ourselves from. So we need to do everything from scratch, especially like you mentioned before. We are really trying to check all the boxes, so we're not giving up on any aspect. Like the farmers need to transition 100%, not slowly by slowly, still doing animal milk and then transitioning. They need to move 100%. We really want to keep it sustainable, so we only work with local ingredients, only sell locally. And in glass bottle, this is really complicated actually for distribution and all the things. And the product itself and the recipe, we didn't want to, because we are not transitioning farmers into huge factories. They're becoming like small production plants, and they have really small rooms. So we need to make production that they are able to do this kind of production in such small environment. So we don't have all these resources and lab environment that those big companies have. Meaning there are lots of products we cannot use because they're, for example, oat milk is actually one of the most difficult plant milk to do. We didn't know that in the beginning. Otherwise, we would not have started with oat milk because it's full of starches. So if you just cook it, it's going to be porridge or pudding. It doesn't work, and you need to pasteurize the product. So you need enzymes to break down the starches into simple sugars. But what these big companies do, they use lab-made enzymes, so chemical enzymes that they just buy and use. But this is actually something that is kind of dangerous to manipulate for people that are working. So in those industries, they have really all the protection needed, the huge ventilators and all these things. But obviously on a farm we don't have that. So, and we don't want to put our farmers at risk, obviously. So we needed to find a way to find natural occurring enzymes directly in plants to use that to break starches. So that was really difficult. And we didn't have a team of like very experienced food scientist and all these things. We really did everything from with no expertise, but we really made it happen in less than 1 year. We got to a product. We made a first recipe and then a second one that people really loved. So we are really happy about that. But yeah, we had lots of difficulties, and also distribution was a nightmare as well, because we worked with subscriptions. So people would subscribe and get a weekly delivery in a pickup point, not at home. But during a pandemic, we were working with shops and restaurants, but there were periods where they were closing, other periods where they needed to change the hours because they were only allowed certain hours. So it was constantly changing, and we were working in 2 different countries, so with 2 different rules. So it really made it difficult, and it was very expensive to make this distribution. So yeah, so in March I decided to pause the whole operation, because I was not even able to just think about how to change that, because it was so time consuming to do this, deliveries and everything for those 3 farms. That's all we were doing all the time, the logistics, distribution. We could not even think about improving the product or improving the whole model or other things. So I put a stop to it in March, so that we can really reflect on what happened, how we can make it better, and kind of change a little bit the model, and also start raising funds, because until now it was self-funded. So now I'm really in this phase where I developed a new model with help of some business advisors and other people, and just from the experience we had. And then, just writing everything down, have a clear plan. And now I'm really in the phase of raising funds. So I'm talking with investors VCs. I'm also applying to grants from governmental organizations, but also from other organizations. Yeah, so that's really the phase I'm in. And at the same time, I'm also looking actually for a co-founder, because until now I'm doing it all mainly myself. So I really would like to bring someone else in that would be as involved as I am, as passionate as I am about this, and that can really help us, take Refarm'd to the next level. So I'm really kind of in this strange phase where everything is a bit, we don't really know when it's gonna start again and all that. But yeah, and then at some point I will rebuild the whole team. So I'm going to be looking for different people, obviously food scientists, but also, yes, like you said, in marketing, sales, distribution. Um, but yeah, we really will take it a bit slower than last year because, yeah, first year starting with 3 farms in 2 countries was not the best plan. So now we're really going to focus on the UK, not going anywhere where farmers want to first. So it's going to be much easier, and then only working in other countries. So mainly, yeah, for us, it's funds. So if you know investors, if you know people that might be interested, please redirect them to us. If anybody would be interested to join the team as a co-founder, or really can bring some kind of experience, either being it in farming, agriculture, or in business, this kind of things would be great to have that on the team. Yeah, then just reach out. That would be great.
Definitely. Typical startup mode where you get the first model down and then get past that hurdle and new problems come, but it's easier. So I'm really excited to see the first model go through. When you mentioned funding, I interviewed Michiel van der Ston here. I found him on the Devolution website, which is kind of funny because either you sent me the connection request on LinkedIn or I sent it to you as like the suggested people we know. And then I message you, we scheduled the interview. Then I see on my newsfeed with Devolution, or I go on their website, and I saw your advertisement for the co-founder position on there. So looks like you're going to the right places. Is there any, I guess, final things you want to share to people, or anything else you want to say before we let them know about your website?
Well, because we're also still very at the start, we're very yeah, just learning, obviously. So we're really happy about any kind of feedback, for example, to know really what people are looking for in terms, for example, of how do they will want to get their milk. Would they prefer it at home, or they like it in shops? What kind of milk they like? What are important for people, so we really make the right decision, because we're still trying to find out what the best distribution channel is, for example. Or for example, we also, the first milk we had was a natural milk, if I can say so. Now we want to work on a barista version and a fortified version, because we had lots of requests for that. So that's also important for us to get all this feedback, to know how people use it, where they use it, so that we make the right decision and can get it, make it accessible to as many people as possible. So yeah, any feedback, ideas, we're really in the beginning of all this. So we're really, yeah, looking for any help or anything on this. We don't pretend to be experts on anything. We're really learning. So we really want to be like a company that is driven by the people, and so to make the decisions upon that. So yeah, any feedback, get in touch.
Definitely. Yeah, when you were speaking before, you said the feedback, I was thinking to myself, I want to do the natural milk, and kind of shifting back to the purpose of creating a vegan world. The bigger picture is so many people have the belief they get their vitamin D from milk, their calcium from milk. So I guess the fortified thing, like that is one of the obstacles of, as opposed to waking people up about the marketing message about the dairy industry, which is another story in itself. So for people that want to give you this feedback or invest with you, partner with you, work with you, what's your website?
Yeah, so our website is just refarm'd.com. So it's Refarm'd without the second E. We are also on Instagram at Refarm'd Official, Facebook at Refarm'd, and just otherwise my email is just Geraldine, my name, at refarm'd.com.
Great. I'll put all the links in the description if I post this on YouTube or Facebook. So thank you for taking the time for the interview.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.